coming back here and seeing the actual Carver Cotton Gin in Bridgewater for the first time, I understand now why this really felt like such a positive development for the town, because when I'm here, I see industry, I see commerce, I see energy.
A cotton gin is a small box with a hand crank on the side that could be used to separate the fluffy bolls from the hard, spiky seeds of a cotton plant. It made cotton picking and harvesting 50 times more effective overnight and became revolutionary in the South. While the first person to patent a cotton gin was Eli Whitney, the design was long since used by slaves, the first being Joseph Duberville of Faraday, Louisiana, although it's unknown if he was the original inventor. Eleazar Carver and Abram Washburn of Bridgewater were the first to seek a marketable patent on the cotton gin. Their proximity to the railroad allowed them to easily transport the gins, revolutionizing the southern cotton industry.
I've never actually been back here before to see the gin itself.
Eleazar Carver and Abram Washburn became two of the wealthiest people, not only in Bridgewater, but in all of the United States. They amassed a huge amount of property and endowed to the town the land where our City Hall, Bridgewater State University, and Old Colony Correctional Center now sit. And a large population of Bridgewater's residents are descendants of the original settlers. Carver and Washburn both moved from manufacturing into the finance industry, where they flourished as capitalists. Much of that early capital has stayed in the town, providing an early nest egg for us to grow into what we are today. Bridgewater has a high-performing public school system, as well as a state university. The population is 80% white, and the entire police force is made up of officers who live in town. As I studied the library archives about our town's early development, the story seemed almost too good to be true. Every time Eleazar Carver and Abram Washburn went down to Natchez, Mississippi, they came back 3 or 4 times richer. We knew they were selling cotton gins, and we knew that cotton gins were an important tool in the development of slavery in the South. But beyond that, I didn't know much. We did have a lot of positive reports about their work as abolitionists and missionaries. Did slavery play a role in shaping the development of Bridgewater? There was only one way to find out.
I'm just stopping to spiritually ground myself before I continue on to Natchez. I've known people who have been impacted by slavery in the U.S. before. People who are family, as close and closer than family as well. But I've never actually been to the South before at all. I've never looked things in the face the way that I'm about to. And it's weird being both Armenian and of Puritan descent because there's part of me that feels a sense of solidarity with the struggle, with the enslavement, with the Armenian genocide, the things I grew up in. But then there's also part of me that is the oppressor and is the colonizer and has inherited that. And as I was reading the journals of Eleazar Carver, I was laughing because they sounded like my journals, like the kind of language that I use and feel at home in.
Lo and behold, I arrived in the South. I picked up my rental car for what was definitely the most interesting ride of my entire life so far.
So I'm about half an hour into my trip from Baton Rouge to Natchez, coming down Highway 61, the Blues Highway. And I just counted my 11th prison.
Little did I know at the time, I'd count a whole lot more. The cotton plantations of the Old South haven't disappeared like I thought they did. They've actually just been turned into prisons. Black people still work there for no pay, because working outside is considered a privileged work duty in prison. And yes, they still grow, pick, and harvest cotton. I visited the LaSalle Ice Processing Center in Jena, Louisiana. What's interesting about this prison is it's run by a for-profit multi-billion-dollar agency, and the inmates here haven't actually been accused of any crimes. They're held pending immigration hearings. But what does that have to do with Bridgewater? Well, I thought you'd never ask. Natchez, Mississippi is on a land formation known as a Devil's Punch Bowl, where there's water swirling around all sides of it. It's somewhat easy to get to, but nearly impossible to get off once you're on. In the early days, this made it an important port for slavery, because they could put people on the island and they couldn't get off. Natchez was actually the richest community in the United States in the 1840s and 1850s, with more millionaires than any other city. But it was financially devastated by the cotton capitalists of the North, especially Carver and Washburn from Bridgewater, Massachusetts. Believe it or not, everybody in Natchez knows the name of Bridgewater. In fact, when I walked into the Museum of African American History, this is the first thing I saw.
To be honest with you, every part of Natchez development is very intriguing and important, at least to me. I'm Bobby Dennis, the director of the Natchez Museum of African American Culture. And what I would like to do is thank you for having some interest in learning of the African American experience here in the city of Natchez, Mississippi. We feel that we are always understated because most of society wants to look at the African American development only through the institution of slavery. Well, here in Natchez, you get the opportunity to see the African American life, a hard story for us to walk out and tell without presenting to you the information of people first so we can get the relationship part built, the compromising part put in. All of this is omitted in us showing you a house, furniture, all from the middle of the book and not starting at the beginning of the book. And if you don't hear it from an individual who's actually lived it, you don't get a chance to understand the complexities and the amount of real work that has been done by the African American community in the beginning of building this city all the way to keeping this city alive today. When I began studying where the cotton gin increased, the number of enslaved people coming into this area, I never thought about going to the source of manufacture of the cotton gin because it is important for individuals to understand the cotton gin was not a savior or a easy way out for the African American. It only increased the need for slavery.
I was sad but unsurprised to hear the cotton gin only increased slavery. But what was slavery like? It's time to go to the cotton fields and find out.
I'm here at the Frogmore Cotton Gin in Faraday, Louisiana, where our Carter cotton gins were used in the cotton harvesting process. Come with me to learn what daily life was like using a Carver cotton gin.
This bed is for an entire slave family, and it's stuffed with cotton husks. This is a medium-sized plantation right by the Mississippi River. In this kitchen, one person did all of the cooking for all of the slaves. They used foods that the Union Army and white people didn't steal from them, which included black-eyed peas, which were considered cow food, sweet potatoes or yams, which were considered foreign and African, collard greens, which were hardy and could grow just about anywhere, and pork, because there was an overabundance of wild boars, which is actually still a problem today. The blacksmiths were not assigned names as slaves and simply marked their pots with a number. And only one person did all of the laundry, which included making all the clothes and making all of the yarn to make all of the clothes. Slaves wore a simple white dress, so they were easily visible in the fields. Working in the cotton field was actually really hard, and picking the usable cotton away from the seeds and husks and other debris was actually really challenging and sharp. Don't be fooled by how nice I look in these pictures. I had to come back and shoot for a second time, because the first time, I was overwhelmed.
Slaves were required to pick 4 of these sacks a day, and their progress was measured by the weight of the sack rather than volume. It was actually really difficult to get the adequate weight because it required stuffing and packing the carton down hard all throughout the day in order to make the minimum quota. If your sack was even 1 pound less than the quota, then at most you would get paid for a half day's labor. And all of your labor had to be done by the time that the sun set, because when the sun set, the cotton developed a dew, which interfered with their ability to weigh how much you had actually picked.
From sun-up until sundown, and long after, there really was no reprieve from the toils of slavery, except for Sunday church, which became a spiritual and emotional safe haven on the plantation. Although I knew from my research in the Bridgewater Public Library archives that it was likely that the Carver cotton gin was used at the Frogmore plantation, I didn't expect to see any. Frogmore highlights the evolution of cotton farming over the centuries, and there's still an active cotton farm today. I was browsing gins from the past 200 years, but little did I know, a surprise was waiting for me.
I snuck away from my tour group, and I'm not really supposed to be up here by myself, but I found it. Hold on. This is it. A Carter cotton gin from Bridgewater, all the way down here by the Mississippi River. Let me show you how it works. You take some of this unmilled cotton right here, freshly picked. You put it in this end. You turn the crank here, and normally this would have sharp teeth. It's gonna separate the cotton from the seed. It actually made cotton picking 50 times more productive. But nonetheless, it would still take an entire day's work to make that basket.
If you're wondering why they're letting me play with such a rare object, this is a replica. The real one is locked up. But I literally stayed here all afternoon. I really wanted to feel what the people of Natchez felt.
Coming to this cotton gin really opened my eyes, especially comparing it to like Boston in the 1800s and colonial times. I think of people coming down the cobblestone in wagons and, signing documents and developing industries and boats and things like that. But here it's just cotton. And just reflecting on the relationship between our towns and how different they are. I'm really thankful that I had the opportunity to come here and visit. And I'm going to keep on reflecting and trying to understand the relationship between Bridgewater and Natchez.
As an archivist, my next question, of course, is what do the records have to say? Do we know anything about Eleazar Carver and Abram Washburn in their time in Natchez? And what was slavery remembered like? I'm on my way to meet with Nicole Harris, curator at the Historic Natchez Foundation.
Life in the fields was brutal, working, untold hours, constantly, sun up to sundown and beyond, I'm sure, but picking cotton and having to take the seeds out and having to help to clean it so that it could then be weighed and shipped out. It was just a really hard life. The Devil's Punch Bowl is a landform in Natchez that was used during the Civil War to kind of a place that kept all of the newly freed slaves that flooded into Natchez and came to the Union Army for aid, and they didn't know what to do with them. And so they built some barracks down in the Devil's Punch Bowl to help house some of these people. It is still a sad story because they still weren't done struggling in life. Even though they were newly freed, the Army didn't have a place for them to go, food to feed them, the resources to truly help them. So they built these barracks and the people were there, but they're really, they really struggled with those resources, and over time they ended up getting dysentery and other diseases, and many of them died, as did many of the Union Army that were staying down there, because the barracks were built really near the river, and so without fresh drinking water and such, it made for bad conditions for them.
Do you have any reason to believe that Eleazar Carver from Bridgewater was ever actually in Natchez?
Definitely. We have court records that show that he was here. We house the courthouse records from the 1800s here in our building, and I have seen those records of debt records of debts not being paid, either with him, to him, or from him. And he is also listed in, you can find newspaper articles that list him. You can see he was listed on the mail listing, as well as there are advertisements for his business.
Do you have any record or any indication that Mr. Carver was an abolitionist in this community?
No, I don't have any evidence that Mr. Carver was an abolitionist. By all accounts, if you look at the dealings of what he was dealing with here, he was well in the buying and selling cotton industry, which to me would not indicate that he was here for freeing anybody. I'd say he was more here to make money.
The combination of cotton capitalism, which was inflicted upon Natchez, Mississippi by Eleazar Carver and Abram Washburn of Bridgewater more than anybody else, as well as the devastating effects of the Civil War, caused Natchez to go from the richest town in America to one of the poorest, and it has never recovered since. Today, Natchez has one of the lowest performing public schools in the country. It has some of the highest rates of public health concerns. In 2025, the average Natchez family of 3 makes just $28,000. And while the city is pretty racially balanced at about 50% black and white, the Natchez Adams High School is over 90% black and severely underfunded and at risk, reflecting a pervasive racism that has hovered over Natchez since the days of slavery. All of the money from the Washburn and Carver capitalism days, and a majority of the money from cotton capitalism in general, has found its home in Bridgewater, while it still continues to grow and flourish today. Natchez still hasn't fully recovered from slavery.
We are standing in the MLK Triangle, which was once the hub for Natchez's historically black business district. And we are hoping to have some of our fellow Northerners from Bridgewater come down and support the work that we're doing here. We are seeking to revitalize this area. We have already, we can walk up this way. Come on, let's walk up. We have already started the process of renovating these spaces, so I want to show you inside so you can see. When we think about slavery in America, and we've talked about this for a really long time in America, what we often focus on is the trauma of the agriculture period, the period in which slavery was at its peak here in America. But what we are hoping to do here in Natchez is frame the agriculture period, the period of human enslavement for African people. We want to frame that differently. We want to frame that in a way that has more utility for black people and white people. Talking about the trauma has been important because it's an important part of the history to understand the detrimental physical, emotional, and psychological effects that inhumane treatment had on African Americans. So that was important. But let's move the conversation forward. And what we are hoping to do, blacknatchez.org as an organization here, we are hoping to emphasize the genius of the people who were enslaved, to talk about the ways in which they contributed to this community and to American society. We have borrowed from the genius of Ta-Nehisi Coates, who in his novel The Water Dancer talks about the importance of the slave, the genius of the slave. Ta-Nehisi Coates says in The Water Dancer on page 34, I believe, that slave masters could not bring water to boil. They could not harness the horse. They did not know how to light the fire. That it was literally the genius of the enslaved men and women who made a plantation work. All right. The thing that we could use most from you is your presence and your support. Like what we are hoping to do here in Natchez, as an organization, we are looking to build a heritage tourism ecosystem. We want to create 200 good paying jobs, meaning jobs that pay $15 an hour, at least $15 an hour. We want to have 20 new businesses that emerge as part of our heritage tourism ecosystem. We also want to create a school to work pipeline for non-college bound students. And so in addition to revitalizing historically Black neighborhoods and communities. So what can you do to help? Well, first you can come, you can book a room at one of our bed and breakfasts or one of our hotels, and then you can partake in the history that we already have here. In other words, you can come and participate in this ecosystem that we're building. But beyond that, or maybe I should say in addition to that, you could have a real stake in what we're trying to build here by maybe buying an antebellum home that seeks to tell the story of Natchez and Bridgewater. One that hires people, workforce development. One that supports the telling or the retelling or the reimagining of stories that have been hidden or buried in the back libraries maybe for really long periods of time. I told Stephanie, maybe you buy a riverboat and create a co-op where folks can buy into this business, and that riverboat runs up and down the river from New Orleans to Nashville or St. Louis, doing and participating in the ecosystem, the heritage tourism ecosystem in that way. Come down and do some research and help us to sort of uncover new stories, or invite us up to Bridgewater and let us dig through your archives and your papers so that we can tell a more full and rich story of the Natchez and Bridgewater partnership, which is also the history and story of America. It's an essential piece of the story that needs to be told, and with your help, we can tell it better.
Thank you for having an interest in us here in Natchez, because we do have a common bond. Massachusetts is the beginning of that eastern seaboard. Natchez is the beginning of the river service, the only city on the Mississippi River. The step forward to building the West. And we hold a common bond of being able to start with the beginning and bring us up to our future, a place where we can see whether or not we're developing in a positive way or a negative way.
When I think of what I saw in Natchez and what I learned about slavery, it's the furthest thing from my mind as I look at this, really peaceful site of development and growth for a community. And I know the same was true for the people of Bridgewater. Carver and Washburn really held tight their close-kept secrets. They truly were living absolute double lives, and nobody here would have guessed it. So even though I have a lot of challenges for the people of Bridgewater, myself included in this film, I have to give us a lot of credit for doing the best we could with what we knew. And, you do what you can with what you know, and when you know better, you do better.